Hello, this is Angie Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical. Welcome to episode 16 of Centered. I'm back. It's been a while, and I love doing this podcast, but it takes time and energy and lots of thoughtfulness. It takes time to edit and write and do all the things that I do. And my job got busy earlier in the year, and then we had some health concerns in our house. I had breast cancer and surgery. And as I was thinking about going back to work after taking time off, I really thought I need to carve time out for Centered because it actually is important to me. And I love having these conversations with Kyra and with all the other people I've had conversations with. So when I was talking to Kyra about starting this up and making a commitment to doing more episodes, we really talked about what is our center. And our center really is the tarot. And, it's part of what we first connected with when we met. And we're both professional tarot readers, and we really, really have a lot in common in terms of our thoughts and thinking about life and how it relates to the tarot. So we thought we'll start at the tarot and see what happens. So we have episodes. It's not like we're taking every card and going in order or something. We're taking what's coming up for us and what's coming up globally. So, of course, it's October, so we decided to talk about the devil. And part of this was inspired by Kyra. Kyra was using a different deck, the Wildwood Tarot. So if you want to, you may want to pause this and grab a picture of it, or if you have that deck, you may want to follow along, or you can kind of Google it. But the devil in the Wildwood is treated as a pagan protector. And so we talked about the essence of the devil. And of course, as per usual, we wander a lot and we talk about a lot of things, including Doreen virtue and spiritual bypassing and shadow work and, all that fun stuff that we love to talk about. And we always do talk about. So we're committed now to sort of recording some more episodes for you, especially things that are our passion. And tarot is certainly in there. I know at some point I'll tell you more about my experience with breast cancer and what we've experienced this year collectively. So just hang on. And if you have questions, we have an area to record messages, or you can just always send them to me at Angie@themoonandstone.com. Otherwise, enjoy this episode of Centered. I'm so excited to talk about the devil, actually, because it's often he gets literally demonized.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
And lost in the shuffle and all that stuff.
Yeah. And he's really much more complex than that, I guess. Yeah.
So let's start because this all came up because you read a really good devil description from the Wildwood Tarot.
Yes.
So you're going to quote from the Wildwood Tarot written by Mark Ryan and John Matthews. I'm not sure who wrote and who drew, but
yes, Mark Ryan and John Matthews, I guess, wrote it, and then the card illustrations are by Will Worthington.
Yeah, this is a cool shamanic deck almost.
Yes.
The Celtic shamanism. So okay, Kyra, go ahead. You read the deck.
Okay, cool. So over the centuries, there has been much cynical manipulation of the concept of the devil for political, religious, and doctrinal purposes, leading to the demonizing of this complex pagan nature spirit. Yet the prime role of such archetypes is one of protection and initiation, and is the human link to wilderness, nature, and fertility. sometimes manifested as fierceness, ecstasy, and sexuality. However, the fear engendered by the warping of this archetype will be with us for a long time to come. The guardian stirs irrational fears from the muddy bottom of the human subconscious and fills the timid soul with foreboding. He is charged with an inhuman and unseen sentience, feeding off fear and panic with a malevolent joy. But within this sardonic and chaotic energy lie wisdom, courage, and strength. The human survival instinct was geared for fight or flight, yet we have learned to rationalize our darkest fears and deal with the unknown dangers with intellectual insight. As we have evolved our understanding of the unknown, we have learned that no diabolical or supernatural force in the universe is as frightening as the human imagination. If the guardian is frightening, it is because we are frightened by our own reflection, our own dark shadow, and it is this element of ourselves we must master. Within this process is the stripping away of conditioning and the distilling of absolute essentials within ourselves. Much can be gained by facing our most deeply hidden and suppressed fears, which usually stem from our own deepest instincts and desires. Once this truth has been absorbed and utilized for our own defense, the darkest places of the most challenging of forest guardians can be looked in the eye without fear.
It's so good.
Yeah, so good.
I mean, that's the thing that whether you believe in God or not, this idea that God created us in his image and we created the devil in ours.
Yes. Yes, that's perfect. Yes, absolutely.
And I think a lot of the idea of the devil too stems from this idea that Christian mystics really came up with this modern idea of the devil,
Yeah.
tarot. So it was, anti-pagan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and yesterday, when a client had pulled the devil card and we were talking about kind of like the complexity of the devil and like how it was working within his psyche, like we were talking about the story that came to mind was the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And we were talking about like Frollo versus like the Romani people, and how essentially like the Romani people are the ones labeled as the devil, as evil, criminal, overly sexualized, like all these different things about them. That Esmeralda was some kind of seductress and different things like that. But meanwhile, you have the one who is called the criminal, the devil, whatever, but then you have Frollo behaving in the way that he does, clearly as more of a I don't know, like even the imagery around him, like in the Disney version of it, is like, very devilish. There's flames around him. He's like the one who has Quasimodo and like these, shackles in a psychological way. And so it's like, who really is the devil here, and how does this even like play out as a something that or a story that like happens in our psyche too.
Yeah.
What
you said before we started was really profound, I thought, where you said, like who decides who the devil is.
Right. Yeah. Who is calling, who is naming the devil in that instance, and what does it really show about that person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's been one of the excuses people have had to call tarot evil or demonic or satanic, or not of Christ or not of religion, or which is of course the whole point of the archetype of the devil, right?
Yeah. Well, and even within like a broader like new age sense with like love and light and all that, things like tarot have frequently been demonized as well, because it is just like we don't want to talk about like the devil card and the tower. Like we want to talk
Exactly.
about, the lovers and the world and the sun.
Which is
Yeah.
funny because I argue that you can't even talk about the lovers without the devil.
Right, exactly,
Like
because
they're
they are
so
the s-
intrinsically
the same
tied.
card.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They are. I mean,
Yeah.
that's I guess maybe we should talk a little bit for all those who don't know about tarot, about the imagery of the traditional Rider Waite Smith deck. And
Yeah.
do you want to describe it a little bit?
Yeah, so the lover's card in the traditional Rider-Waite Smith has a man and a woman standing in the Garden of Eden, and they are making a choice, perhaps, to unite with one another, bond with one another, whatever it is. And then the devil, though, being number 15, which adds up to 6, and the lovers is number 6.
Yeah.
Then you see the lovers once again, but now this time they're standing in front of the devil and they're chained to him.
Yeah. And they both have curly red hair,
Yes.
tails with flames.
That's right. And
And
we looked up the curly red hair thing before, that it's apparently supposed to make someone more devilish.
yeah, well, it was the traditional color of Judas's hair.
Oh, really?
Curly,
I didn't realize that.
curly red hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah.
So that's why red haired children have been demonized.
So that's why.
I know. So then, what happens is that people are like, oh no, the devil's here. Ah, like this
Hmm.
is so evil.
Yeah.
When, I mean, my traditional understanding of the devil is about unhealthy attachments.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
maybe we can see the lovers as a healthy attachment, but you can't tell because it's so early in the major arcana,
Yeah.
so early on the fool's journey that you still don't even know if it's healthy or not. It's just like these two young, naked, vulnerable kids
Hmm.
getting hitched, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And they have no idea what they're in for.
no. So they're at the
Yeah.
6. I mean, they just basically, like, that's the other, like, we should talk about that at some point, the fool's journey, but like, you go through the mother, the father, the teacher, and then you get to the lovers. Like, so you're
Yes.
basically getting married right out of school, according
Hmm.
to the tarot, right?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
15 is the devil. So by the time you even understand unhealthy attachment, you're like way in it, you know?
Well, and there was the one card that you mentioned that you have where it was like, you said about the devil, like, and in terms of the
Yes.
lovers, like, what are they possibly even willingly walking right into?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's from the tarot of the new vision, which is it's an interesting deck. It's based completely on the Rider Waite Smith deck, except that it takes the perspective that you stand behind so you're looking out basically behind the main character. So in the devil, they're standing behind the devil and the two people, and what they're looking, so you see what they're looking at, and what they're looking at are a bunch of other devils. And the idea
Okay.
here is that you're chained to the devil, instead of like facing the devil you don't know. So in a lot of ways, it is a kind of protection.
Yeah,
Think about it, because these
absolutely.
guys look pretty menacing in the background there.
Mhm.
Um, which is, when we were looking at the modern witches tarot, um, the people are turned away from you too. You know, they're genderless, but
Yeah.
well, they're not genderless, but you can't discern their gender necessarily. There's
Yeah.
one body that might look more feminine, but you can't really tell.
Mhm.
But it's definitely a dude, not Baphomet.
Yes.
But do
Yes.
you read that? Like, who do you read on the Rider Waite Smith? Like, who is that devil? Because the tradition that I was taught in, that there's the 4 um archangels, and
Mhm.
that the devil is Uriel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. I have heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except not the
Hmm.
Uriel that is like a Doreen virtue.
Not the Doreen virtue
She's
Uriel.
the one who's like, oh, the tarot deck is evil. You can't do it. And
Right, exactly. She even made like a her own tarot deck at one point, and it was like supposed to be like less evil.
I blame her for so much in our community.
I know. I know. And then she goes and she just ditches, like she just leaves.
She's, yeah, that makes me so like angry. It was so, I remember watching her video going like, you mother, like what the F, for
This,
real are you saying?
yeah,
Just shut up and do your own thing. Like nobody freaking cares.
this is actually a great topic for talking about the devil,
I
by
know.
the way.
That's so true. I always was so suspicious of her though. I mean,
Yes.
I loved her Ascended Masters deck and the Goddess
Yeah.
deck. They were like my
Yes.
first Oracle
The
deck.
goddess deck was great. Yes.
But
Yeah.
then, when I started reading her stuff, I read this book, the Earth Angel book.
Oh, yes. Yes. The
You
Earth
remember that?
Angel book. Yes, I do remember that.
And she's like, Earth Angels, you can always tell they're tall and blonde.
Yes. They're tall.
I'm like, you
That's
mean
right.
Aryan? They're Aryan?
Right. Exactly. I know.
They
I
look
remember
like
that. It
you?
was ridiculous. Yes. I know. That's what I thought too. She was like Earth Angels. Yes, they if they don't naturally have light hair, they'll lighten their hair. And she was like an unnatural blonde.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, what's funny is
stop.
that like right before she found God, she said God told her not to dye her hair anymore. So
Oh, okay. Did he?
yeah.
Yeah.
God. Only talking to Doreen Virtue.
Only to Doreen Virtue. But yeah, I mean, really, like her, her focus on like keeping things light and not dealing with like darkness and things like that, and even like clearly in how she was writing about stuff being racist,
Yeah.
having like it's not overt, it's not right in front of your face, but it's not hard to see it in what she's saying. And then on top of it, to go and do what she did, I mean, it does kind of show you, like there was one deck I saw one time, and I can't remember which one it was, but for the devil, they showed a man in a suit and tie, and he was like, a white man, professional
Yes.
looking in a suit and tie, and like totally Doreen Virtue. And almost her over focus on, I'm not an angry person, I'm positive, I'm love and
Yeah.
light, I'm angelic, is perhaps the sign of what is she trying to maybe rope you into.
Yeah. She was part of Hay House, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, the whole Hay House, I don't know, like they're like Disney, like it's a problem with
Yes.
them like
They're like
spiritual
Disney.
bypassing. Yeah, I mean, they're like
Yeah.
not only spiritual bypassing, but like just the color stuff. Like I don't know if
Yes.
you follow Beck's Life and Row House
Yes.
Publishing.
Yes.
I mean, she left Hay House to start her own Row House
Yeah.
Publishing for people of color, because she felt like there was so much disinformation coming out of Hay House. Because something like
Absolutely.
how many people, 11 or 9 of the 11 or 12 top anti-COVID vax or anti-vax people were at a Hay House. They were Hay House
Oh, wow.
published
Yeah.
or something.
Wow.
I probably
Wow.
am wrong on that statistic, but it's like it was ridiculously high.
Right. It's more than just one.
Yeah.
Right. It's yeah. Yeah. Wow. Um, yeah, there's been a lot out of Hay House over the years that has been kind of sketchy. Like even some of the people that I perhaps have liked a little bit more through there, it still seemed very like there's a lot of bypassing.
Oh, for sure.
Like I really like certain decks that I've gotten from Hay
Mhm.
House, but then I do feel like certain people, and it might be like a me thing. or maybe I'm sure you get it too, but it's
Yeah.
just like you can feel it.
You definitely can feel it. And there've been a lot of criticism from some of them. I mean,
Yeah.
Louise Hay started the ball rolling by saying, like, if you have chicken pox, you hate your
You
parents or
cause
something.
right. Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what she says about chicken pox.
That would be, I mean, that would make sense. Yeah. If
All of
you,
them like have these fake vulnerable stories
yes. Oh yeah, that's a good point.
too.
Fake vulnerable stories. Yes.
I mean, not that they're fake, like I'm sure it was very meaningful to them, but it's like, I've done this thing, but they never talk about like the actual devil part of it, or the actual struggling part, or the torment
Mm,
part, or the suffering part. They only talk about the salvation part, which is exactly a Christian trope to
that's
begin
a
with.
really good point. Yeah.
So they're like, I had an eating disorder, but I solved it myself by realizing the emotional stuff. Right.
Right. They don't talk about like feeling suicidal or the
Right.
dark periods of it. Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Or like they don't tell you how to move through it. Like it's just like, pray to the angels and everything will be fine. Like the angels are there for you, or recognize the emotional connection with this and you'll be fine. Like that's the part,
Mm,
like, of my journey at least. It's not of lack of understanding of why
right.
this stuff is
Exactly.
happening. It's not like self-knowledge. We say this in AA, self-knowledge availed us nothing, because that's not the point. Like I knew I was alcoholic for a long
Right.
time before I quit drinking. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or I drank
Exactly.
alcoholically before I quit drinking. I had to, like, it was something else.
Yeah.
Something else, that got me there. But that's the thing with the devil, is like the devil demands attention,
Yes.
and it'll either get it through the shadow, through you acting out a shadow and being unaware of it, or you can be aware of it and not act out a shadow. So you get to
Right.
decide.
Right. It's like someone like Doreen Virtue is, supposedly, well, not anymore, but in the past would supposedly be a better person than, someone who is perhaps angry, or
Yes.
who uses maybe even sometimes violent words, or who sometimes, is a little bit harsh. Like she would be a better person than them. But really what you see is that it's like, it's not that she's not violent. She's just violent in a different way. It comes out the sides if she's not willing to own the fact that as a human being, there's some amount of anger, violence, harm that exists inside of
Yes.
her.
And the I mean, this is a thing that constantly, like, what is violence? Like, it
Mhm.
not acknowledging people's experiences is a kind of violence.
Yes,
It's a
exactly.
neglect, but it's still violence. It's still
Absolutely.
a trauma. And
Yes.
pretending like that's not of the light, it's not only unfair to people, it's out and out cruel.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's funny that we're talking about Doreen Virtue with the devil. I think, like, I wasn't expecting to go there, but in the same token, there's a lot of false prophets in our
Yes.
community, so to speak,
Yes.
which is the whole archetype of the devil.
Right, absolutely. And what they tend to do is like, of course, I mean, technically here I am doing it too in a way, but what they tend to do is say, look at the, those people, or people who are like that
Yeah.
are the devil. And they're not examining themselves in any kind of way, saying like, what devilish things do I have within me?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think what I loved about the Wildwood Tarot description was talking about our connection to our humanness, and
Mm-hmm.
how Christianity, I mean, I hate to, it didn't say this specifically, but Christianity really had us demonize our own human instincts. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's
Yes.
something we talked about right before. Is like, it's really hard to demonize things in nature. Like, is there
Yes.
a bad guy animal in nature? No.
Right.
the shark is
Right.
just trying to survive. Yes, he's the biggest and baddest ass, but like he's not
Yeah.
evil.
Right. Yeah, I was just talking to a friend about the idea of like hunting, right? And now I'm someone who grew up like not hunting. I grew up, not around people who had guns or anything like that. But I will say, like, because of exploring shadow more, my views have shifted with things like that. Whereas, like my friend was saying, oh, I could never do that to an animal. I could never, never, ever, right? And I've been like that. And I probably even right now am still kind of like that. I think I would find it to be a massive challenge to actually do that. But that being said, it's interesting that we've labeled something like the hunter as evil, because like you said, when it comes to animals, is there a bad guy animal? Is it like, oh, this one is a predator and that makes them bad?
Right. And on
Um,
top of it, like the farmer though
right,
is not demonized, not seen as
right,
evil, even if he's keeping like 300 chickens in small cages, you
exactly.
know, and then killing them by having them chained up.
Right, exactly. That's not evil. But going out in the woods with a rifle to get a deer is like, what is wrong with you? In the world
Right.
of, I hate to say it, but in the world of white liberals.
Right. I mean, I was just going to say, like in my home, my dad hunted and
Right,
my husband
exactly.
hunts, so I don't have
Right,
a problem with that. But in the same token, we know what society says about it, and what,
right. Yeah. It's like in Pennsylvania, of course, like hunting is pretty widely accepted. And yet there's also this like kind of other part of the culture that is very much like labeling people who do such things as being I guess we could just even say more barbaric in some way, more
right.
violent. Yeah, it's interesting.
It is, especially because it's for our food.
Right,
Like that's what I guess I was trying to get at with the devil, which is like, when it takes us away from our animalness, like,
right.
what are the things that the devil represents? Like overeating, having
Uh-huh.
too much sex,
Yep.
like just having sex, like they're naked
Mhm.
on the devil.
Mhm.
And that's the whole point. Like the devil came to seduce
Yes.
Eve in, the Garden of Eden. But what did the devil actually seduce Eve about? Like when you read
Right.
it, it's the tree of knowledge. Like
Right,
eat from
exactly.
the idea like of who like knowledge. So you're
Yes,
not being like kept prisoner. Um
absolutely.
and your body is, naked.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes. Yeah, there's just so much with that. Hmm. Yeah, and yeah, I love what we're talking about with the animal instincts and things like that, because I talk to clients a lot about that, like in terms of like feelings even. How often we are saying things like, well, I shouldn't be angry, or, it wasn't that big of a deal. I have no reason to be sad. I don't have a right to feel this way, and
Yeah.
different things like that. It's once again denying the senses, the impulses, the feelings. And the other thing I say to clients too is like to really think about like even in terms of like this idea of violence, and how we don't label things violent when they are, and then there's other things that we label as violent when it's kind of questionable if that really is violent, right?
Yeah.
Or even it's questionable if violence in that sense wasn't warranted in that moment.
Yeah.
um like speaking truth in many people's eyes is a violent act because it upsets me.
Right.
Right,
Right.
and so it's like, is it really violent,
Yeah.
or did you just not like it?
Yeah,
And
that's the whole thing with like too, like when we're talking about like racism or whatever, like why
right,
people feel like getting accused of being racist is worse than what they actually said, which was
right,
racist.
right. It's like, you're being violent because you called me a racist.
Yes. Or a bully.
No,
That's another one that
right.
gets. Like you're being a bully.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you would call me that.
And like really like this labeling of the devil in that way like really serves the colonizer because it's like
Yes.
it declaws and defangs people of color because well you're mean if you do that, you're being violent if you do that. And
Yeah.
how many clients I have worked with who are people of color where they are in a way almost afraid of their very very natural right ability to defend and protect themselves
Yes.
and stand in their power.
Hmm.
And then
I've
they
been
fear it, thinking they're bad for having it.
Yes. Yes. And I've been seeing a lot more too talking about anger with women versus anger with men,
Mm-hmm.
how like society is like doesn't see angry men as a problem, but they see angry
Right.
women as a problem,
Yeah.
which is the same thing, you know, not the
Right.
same thing, but
Exactly.
like, you know, when we
And like
allow the
women have
devil.
the same thing too. I mean, women are just a lot of women are absolutely terrified of their anger and of their power.
Oh yeah.
Many times when a situation calls for us to assert ourselves, we think that we're afraid of the other people's reactions, but many times it's like we're just afraid of like using our power because
Yeah.
we don't want to be, you know, I was talking to a client recently about like, well, what if I'm wrong that this guy's being creepy? Then I'm like, you know, a cop who shot an innocent person. No, you're not.
What?
Right. Like, you know, we were like, you know, how we'll have that feeling sometimes. It's like, well, you know, if this man's being creepy and I tell him to stop and I don't like it, and what if I'm wrong? What if he didn't mean anything by it? Well, then I'm like, you know, someone who way jumped the gun and I killed someone who didn't deserve it. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's the power of the patriarchy
Mhm.
right there, that like
Yep.
just accusing someone. Because if someone
Yes.
were to say to me, like, I think you're being creepy, or I'm worried that you're being like, what you said is really creepy, as a non-creep, I would just
Hmm.
be like, oh my gosh, like that was definitely not my intention. How can I make you
Right.
feel more comfortable?
As a non-creep.
Right? Right? Like
Yes,
I'm not creepy behind
exactly.
anybody. Like if
Like
a
that was not
man,
my intention. Please let me know.
right. Like I've seen some videos of men who realize they're following like a woman's getting nervous because they're behind
Yes.
them. And they, you know, the non-creeps stop and say, I am
Yeah.
so sorry. You keep
Right.
going. I will
Because they
wait. Like,
get it.
yeah. Because they
Yeah.
understand like women have something to be afraid of.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's that
Yeah.
whole like men are afraid of getting laughed at and women are afraid of being killed.
Right. Yes, exactly. Oh man. Yeah. You know, I was looking at because I have this one open. We had talked about it briefly, but and I've seen other decks do this too, but the Enchanted Forest Tarot has the devil as the liar.
Yes.
And it's like a man like with his finger, like with a come hither look.
Yeah.
But I saw here, like in what we were kind of talking about before, one of the meanings at a glance that it has is separation of mind and heart and
Yes.
soullessness. So it is, yeah, anything those times where it's like our instincts or yeah, our more animal instincts are like coming up. Do we demonize them? And then at that point we're separated, you know, mind and heart. Our soul is being killed in a way, or
Yeah.
we're ignoring it. And then we're more likely to fall into a trap when
Yeah.
we're not listening to those devilish impulses.
Yeah. And disconnect from the body and the mind, you know,
Yeah.
or the heart and the body, you know,
Yeah.
any of it. It's like interesting. I pulled out a bunch of ones from different decks, and I think it's really interesting to think about like how other people handle the devil. Um, in the native, I think it's a Vision Quest tarot, which I like. It's kind of from a Native American point of view. They have torment, you know, and
Oh yeah.
he's
Yeah.
kind of like you just see the back of the person tied up. And then the star child one is oppression. And
Mm,
she's
yes.
yeah, she's kind of veiled,
Mm-hmm.
She still has crystals though. This is the thing about that one. I pulled it out because it's I like it, and it also does a little bypassy stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and then Santa Muerte, which my friend Natalie gave me when I was going through breast cancer. The devil is the puppet master. He's making the
Mm.
mariachis play.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, do you ever use this deck called the Chrysalis deck?
Yes, yes. I used to use it a lot. And then for whatever reason I just didn't click with it. It's such a beautiful deck.
It is.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful deck though. Yeah.
This one is the Bella Rosa.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Bella Rosa. Yeah.
Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't.
I mean, what it looks like is the Venetian kind of like carnival
Yeah.
mask. I just the idea of being masked and this like
Yes.
person that would be like masked is important, I think.
Oh, totally. Especially, connecting back to the Hay House
Yes.
Doreen Virtue thing.
Yes. But it's interesting too, because like kind of reading more about neurodivergence in
Mhm.
myself and
Yeah,
my kid, and
totally.
learning more about masking
Yes.
and what that's like, which I realize I do a lot.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't
Yeah,
consider myself autistic, but I do it like just in terms of my fidgety, like
right.
craziness.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's really like with autistic kids when they're put through therapies like ABA, applied behavioral analysis, which is basically like they'll, like, oh, you're doing a behavior we don't like, stop doing that, here's something else to do instead, that sort of thing, like correcting their behaviors. Like a lot of times what that does is it is that devil thing. It is that trick of, look, we'll get this autistic child to perform like neurotypical children, but what it really does is it divides them from their true senses, and instincts
Yes.
and true nature. Yeah.
And it becomes so second nature. Like it happens so early
Yes.
that they don't even know.
Yes.
It's like what I do in my bedroom versus what I do out in the world. Like they're
Right.
not even probably allowed to do it in like collective spaces in the home.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
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 But it does like, I kind of feel like that's such a devil thing, but it's hard because when we talk about the devil, we talk about someone maliciously. It's like almost like a malicious thing where someone's maliciously trying to mask themselves. But when you talk about it in terms of like separating us from our human instincts or who we are,
Hmm.
our ego, and you know like what we're projecting out into the world, it becomes like, then who's the devil? Like when you pull the archetype, are you being ruled by the devil or are you the devil? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I really do see it as that like false promise of like belonging, right? Like if,
Yes.
autistic kid or even little girl or child of color or all these different things, it's like
Yeah.
if you perform this way, you will get the acceptance and belonging you're looking for, and
Yes.
people won't reject you, and it never actually is the case.
Yeah.
It's
And
always an
gender
empty promise.
performance, right? Like
Yes,
gender.
exactly. Like you are either a boy or you are a girl, and you play those roles
Yeah.
hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, my child's non-binary. So when I'm talking to them about what they see as non-binary, I'm like, that's how I feel inside too.
Right.
I just kind of wonder if we're all a little like we're all non-binary. You know what I mean?
Right. and some kind of devil or hierophant devil tag team
Yes.
kind of has kind of convinced us all that yes, it's one or the other, and that's what we all fall into, and we never questioned it.
Right. And the devil, literally separates male and female.
Yes.
So does the lover. I mean, that basically the
Yes.
Hierophant says like, okay, you two, you're male,
Yeah.
you're female, you get married, you
Right.
have babies.
Right.
So that's why I love all these new decks coming out that are non-gendered.
Yes.
you know
Absolutely.
it just would be interesting because a lot of times, the way they show people is naked on the lovers. It would be interesting just to have completely non-binary people where you can't even see their genitalia.
Yeah. It's funny, for some reason that led me to thinking about how, like, with the lovers card, like the lovers is, yes, like this, two lovers coming together thing, but it is also like the point of the hero's journey where the hero encounters his first temptation that
Yes.
might take him away from his mission, because it's like he's going to get too wrapped up in this relationship with this other person, that does he continue on his quest,
Right.
or does he fall into the trap of codependency and kind of disappearing into the other?
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is how I use the devil in mine.
Yeah, totally.
Like a lot of it
Totally.
is codependency or like being
Yep.
attached to something that is taking you away from your path,
Yeah.
the solitary path or the path of. But I get that card a lot when people think they're doing something wrong.
Yes, when they think they're doing, that is exactly, oh my God, right? There's been so many times where I've got the devil where I pulled it and I was like, oh, it's saying that the situation or person or thing is bad, but really what it was reflecting was my own feelings and
Yeah.
fears about it, that I was doing something wrong, that something bad was going to happen.
Right. Like, I mean, I have a friend who, when I was deciding to kind of um, branch out and start charging for tarot readings, I would do a lot of tarot readings for her. And she was in a marriage and also like having an affair. And the
Mm-hmm.
devil came up like literally every time, even though her needs weren't being met in her primary relationship.
Right.
It was, this whole idea, like, and she was like a little obsessed and stuff like that. It wasn't totally her idea of the devil, but just this idea that she was like kind of always feeling like she's doing something wrong or she's sinning,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote
Yes.
sinning.
Oh my God, yes. Well, and I didn't even tell you, but I mean, about my date from this
Yeah.
past weekend. And before I went on it, I had pulled cards about what
Yeah.
it was going to be like. And the first time I pulled cards, I got the Page of Swords, the King of Pentacles, and the Lovers.
Oh man. That's so funny.
But then I started to get more nervous about it because, there were various circumstances with it that about. And like I actually, the next time I pulled I pulled again and I pulled the devil, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I was like, this is gonna be bad. This person a narcissist.
Yeah.
Like all this stuff. And what it turned out to be, it was like a lot of even like my own fears about connecting to someone, and the possibility of am I going to get myself chained? Am I going to
Yeah.
be devoured somehow by this situation?
Yes, exact. I mean, that hits it for me.
Mhm.
For me,
Yeah.
like I pull the devil in my readings when I'm obsessively thinking about something too.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not even obsessively doing something. I'm just like, if I've had a situation where there was like a confrontation and I'm like replaying every nuance of the conversation and thinking about the things I should have said and didn't say. And,
Yes.
you know, all that stuff, that the devil
Yes.
comes up for that.
Definitely. Yeah, totally.
Interesting.
Totally.
I love the idea also in that Wildwood description of like the fact that you're looking in the mirror, you know.
Yes. Yeah. You're really looking at your own fears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting, like as a Capricorn, that this is the card of the Capricorn.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it's a little freaky. I think
Yeah.
when I tell people that and they're Capricorns, like, what do you mean? That's just another stereotype of us being money obsessed.
I know,
Right.
I was gonna say.
Which is interesting, but I do think there is something to that with Capricorns. It's not that we're
Yeah,
money obsessed, we're security obsessed, safety obsessed.
absolutely. Safety
Yeah.
obsessed. Yes. Well, yeah, and to the point that like with Capricorn energy, like, depending on how much of it there is or how warped it might come out, how traumatized someone with Capricorn energy is, you can really, I think, have that like overly restrictive kind of personality, whether it's like overly restrictive with my emotions, overly restrictive with my words, overly restrictive with my money, overly
Yes.
restrictive about like I need to have my physical space be safe.
Yeah.
Totally.
And it's like the literal upside down pentacle where it puts
Yeah,
everything else above our spirit, you know.
totally.
It's like, what
Yes.
am I making a decision about? Well, I'm clearly going to make the decision based on how much money I'm going to make, not how I'm going to feel about it,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah.
how this is going to affect everything else around me versus my
Yeah.
spirit. So that's why I feel like in my life, I've had to learn how to flip that around and like really prioritize my self care and prioritize my spirit because I
Yeah.
was, I think my instinct is to choose working too much, and so
Hmm.
then what, and I think that the devil represents this very well with addictions too, which is what happens when we don't put our spirit first
Yeah.
is that then we self-soothe with other things that help our spirit, you know what I mean,
Yes.
which is like the
Yes.
spirits, as
I
young.
love that you said that about the upside down pentacle. Like that is a great way to think of that. Yeah, everything else above the spirit.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
literally like as someone who has gone through, uh alcohol addiction and stuff, like I would, I could take the alcohol away, but then I would just put like rampant sex in there. I would put like
Yeah.
overeating in there. I would put anything, literally anything could be above, like could be in that addiction hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I have to watch all of it. But then I fall in the other realm of restriction, like you
Hmm.
said.
Well, yeah, and I just was thinking about like a couple other Capricorn energies I know, and it's like, like clients I've had with like Capricorn moons, and just like the
Yeah.
restrictiveness around the emotions sometimes, and like the emotions kind of being in bondage, in a
Yes.
way.
How do you
Yeah.
work through that with them? Because my husband does that too.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, Capricorn. He's a Scorpio sun and Capricorn moon.
Okay. Well, it's really challenging, to be perfectly honest. Like I think of this one client I have, and she has a Capricorn moon, and we've talked about that a lot, like with the restrictiveness, with the emotions. And hmm, the main thing always has been, that what I felt that this client has needed more than anything is just consistency, stability, and like a sense of security, like with the
Yeah.
therapeutic relationship. Um, but it's really hard to deal with,
Yeah.
honestly. It's one of my favorite clients, and we click so well. But it is funny when it comes to talking about like the deeper emotional stuff. It can be like pulling teeth, and they don't want it to be like that. They're actually at Gemini Sun. And
Right.
so it's like they don't want it to be like this, but it's like that's just how it's going. Yeah.
It's interesting though, like when you hold the mirror up Like, do they see the devil they're chained to?
Mm,
Probably, if
that's a
she
good
doesn't want to be that
question.
way.
Yeah, that's a
She's
good
probably
question.
seeing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's kind of an
Yeah.
interesting part of the devil card, you know, is that as a tarot reader, I never say like, "Oh, you are really unhealthily attached to something." I'll
Right.
just say like, the devil usually comes in when we have some kind of fear or some kind of attachment that isn't serving our highest good. So like,
Right.
and I'm like, put up the mirror. So what is that for you?
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
how do you relate to that? And that's the
Yeah.
question I usually pose to them so they
That's
can
a good
figure it out,
one.
because it's not my business to figure it out. It's not me to say you're an
Exactly.
alcoholic.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great one. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I have a very funny story about reading tarot with the devil, which is that I was reading for my cousin who at the
Mhm.
time was living in New York City, and she's an art, like her husband's an artist, and they do a lot of like amazing stuff. They're always like having projects and stuff. So she asked me if I would do a reading for her. I'm doing the reading, and the devil was in the unknown. Okay.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh shit. Like, how do I say this?
Especially when it's in the unknown.
Yeah, because she's like in this party, whatever, like artsy party scene.
Yeah.
Like maybe she's just doing a ton of coke, or like I had no idea what it was because I'm not part of that daily life for her. So I tell her, and she goes, I know exactly what that is. And I was like, do you? And she was like, I'm making it, my husband and I are making a documentary about these goth party people. And those are the goth party people. They're up all night. They get paid to go to parties and just show up and look cool. Like companies and people will pay them.
How do I become one of these goth party people?
I know. I mean, it was
This
so
is our
funny
next
because I like,
job.
how would I guess that? I would never be able to guess that.
Right. No, never.
But the
That's
fact that like the
hilarious.
devil came up because they just walk around with like umbrellas and weird shit,
Oh my God. Amazing.
and they are wearing like these huge like boots, they have the whole
Amazing.
gear. Yeah. So when they show up, people look at them like they're the freaking devil.
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So it was just kind of funny that it came up that way. So I never tell people like what I think this is going to mean, because it's so personal. And that's the other part of this card, is that it really is what you think about the devil, not what I
Yeah.
think about the devil.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love it.
Yeah. Or like what my client thinks about the devil.
Yeah. I love it.
Oh my gosh, it's been
Yeah.
so fun to talk.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie at themoonandstone.com.